creating content on YouTube has changed my life. It's changed my relationships. It's opened doors for me. I could not have engineered in 2014 when we dropped our first YouTube video that this was going to happen.
This is Chris Do, an Emmy Award-winning designer and director who is the founder and CEO of the Futur, an online education platform with the mission of teaching 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love. Chris has over 27 years of experience in brand design, strategy, consultancy, working with clients such as Microsoft, Sony, Nike, and Starbucks. And today on Useful Content, Chris teaches us the good way to steal content.
The good way of stealing is saying, I want to honor the original creator, put their name, put their face, say that this is where I got this idea from, and I need to do one critical thing.
Chris and I rank all of his social media platforms, and you'll be surprised to find out which one comes in dead last. Why is it so low on the list?
It's low on the list. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, and I'll just put it out there.
Chris reveals his biggest source of content ideas.
And I'll tell you what it is, and it's going to surprise a lot of people. The biggest source for my content is...
And at the end of the conversation, Chris tells us the story of how he got cast on Amazon Prime's 60-Day Hustle.
When I was looking into the environment, I saw this same number of people, this very red environment, not dissimilar to yours, and I was just like, my brain just completely froze.
Today we are celebrating our 50th episode. Let's make useful content. Teaching you to make useful content so that you can build long-term relationships with the people that matter to your business. Hello and welcome to Useful Content, and today we have a brand new teacher, may I say a professor of creativity and business, Chris Do, here with us. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So Chris, I want to jump right into the questions and talk about some of your content, your process, and everything surrounding that. So let me just start off with a general question. So you consume a lot of YouTube, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, and I know you often speak to other creators. What is your point of view on the state of content in general? Are we in a good place or a bad place?
I think we're in a great place. And what we're seeing is the algorithms continue to adjust such that if you're a new creator or if you've been creating for 10 years, you have an equal shot at reaching people. And I think that burned out a lot of creators on YouTube because they used to enjoy a lot of free traffic. Mm-hmm. But then I think what YouTube realized is it's disproportionately sending traffic to a few big creators, and the big creators keep getting bigger. So it means that although a small percentage, I think it's 10% of your audience will see your new upload, the other 90% that you need to get, you have to earn. And that makes us all honest and to make sure that we're putting out the very best content that we can.
So do you see any specific victories or dangers coming around the corner?
Yeah, I see the rise of multiple platforms to compete for creators, and they all want exclusive content or to have your content premiere on their platform first. And so they're all trying to figure out how to monetize now. So TikTok has a creator fund, and so they give money to creators who are doing good content, that are producing content consistently. And then I think we see Instagram not doing a great job of paying creators, but we know that YouTube is implementing a lot of different things, including educational portal. Now they have premier or premium memberships, which you can join to help support the creators. I think what they're realizing is a few years in, creators, after the initial buzz of building an audience, need to really make money to be able to do this long-term and sustainably.
Yeah. And well, here's the thing. I think that even though these platforms are making all these efforts in order to pay creators, how can creators then make sure that it works for themselves apart from the platforms? What are some of the systems that they can build? Because platforms don't really pay that much. And like for me, in the Caribbean, platforms don't pay at all.
Right.
And so what are some of the systems that creators can build, and what have you seen that works around monetizing and making sure that their business is sustained in content?
Okay, there's a couple things. I'm glad you asked that question. We know that ad rates are determined by probably the country of origin and also where your biggest audience is. And ad rates are what pays for creators to make content. So if you're in a primary market where they're fetching the highest ad dollars, then you're going to do really well. So one thing I've heard about is that there are Americans who are creating TikTok accounts who will get them to 100,000 followers, and then they will then broker them and sell them to someone overseas. So that person can take over and appreciate the kind of American origin created account. So I see that there's probably a secondary market here where there's going to be kids who are going to use probably AI to grow an account and get it up to a certain size and then auction it off. And at first I thought a little shady about this. I'm like, this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But it actually serves a very real need that if you're in a second or third market that you can actually pay for this. And it's not like they're selling it to you for a ton of money, but it does require a little bit of money. So the reason why I got over this is somebody's like, hey, check yourself, man. When somebody owns a building on a primary street for a retail front, you're paying for that too. So if they're getting you access on, you play Monopoly on Boardwalk, all the blue properties,
Yeah.
Park Place, if they've basically built that for you, why not buy that? So that's one way that you can go around this. The other thing that you can do, I think, is you can create content that has an appeal to a much broader audience in markets where there's a lot of competition for ad dollars, and you can do that. I think the last thing that you can do is, okay, so AdSense is not going to pay you because you're in the Caribbean or something like that. You can create educational content and put it under the educational portal and just sell that. So you have a big audience, and then you can monetize by creating courses that people are happy to pay for. Or people can support you through memberships. That's another way around the AdSense block.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Because I think that is continually a major challenge. Up to this morning, I was speaking with a friend of mine. She is Trinidadian, but she lives in Florida in the US. And she was like, well, if you want me to set up the YouTube channel for you, I can do that. I really want to talk about something that you said back in the day when you first started your podcast, because I listen to your podcast all the time, and there's something that you said that was very interesting in the very first episode of the Future podcast. So you said the podcast came from all our users who said, I love the content. I just want to be able to hear you on my commute. Because to me, if you want to be successful in business, you have to give the users what they want. This is called user experience design. Give them what they want in the fewest number of steps. Is that still a major driver of your content today?
Yes, it is. And I know you've listened to it because you're pretty much saying it verbatim the way that I explained the story. So you can give the customers what they want, or the way I was thinking of it at the time is meet them where they're at. So what I didn't realize is that there are a lot of people who are listening to or watching our YouTube show, but have really bad internet connection.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. So some kids in the Philippines don't have consistent internet connection. So they might go to a hotel or a library or something and then download episodes. But YouTube, unless you have a premium account, you can't download the episodes. So don't make it more difficult for people to consume your content. Yeah. So initially, to be totally honest with you, I was kind of reticent of making that content. I really was. I'm like, here's another thing I need to do. And I have not enough people to do what it is that we're doing anyways.
Yeah.
But it's one of the best decisions because now the podcast has its own audience, and we're top 20 in 50 countries, top 10, I think, in 10 or something like that. And so it's remarkable. That means that we have this incredible reach that goes way outside of YouTube. So it's kind of shocking to me when we meet people in real life and we ask them, how'd you find out about us? Oh, the podcast. I'm like, that's not even my home base, but it's turned into its own thing. So I'm delighted about that result.
Yeah, it's a great thing. And I'm so glad that you are thinking about how people consume the content in other countries, because there are challenges.
Yeah. You know, one thing that you have to be careful about is if you always give the clients or your customers what they want, you wind up making products that don't really excite you, that divert your resources, then dilute your energy and your focus. So you kind of have to have a balance. Like, don't block them out, but don't do everything they ask for, because they ask for all kinds of crazy stuff. And then you over-index on what they want, and you realize it was just a loud minority and not what the majority wanted. So some part of you being an entrepreneur and a visionary is to think about the things that they want that they don't yet know that they want. That's the key.
That's a challenge for everybody, like the balance of what my audience consumes and what they want and what
Yep.
I want to make. And I know some people tend to go on one side of, I'll just make what I want. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Those people are like artists, I guess. But then you have to run a business as well. So you have to think about those aspects of how people consume content. Yeah. All right. So the YouTube channel, it's going pretty well, I suspect.
Yes.
That's all the public content that people are consuming. So there's a component to your content, which is Future Pro, which is a ton of private content,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So how many pieces of content do you think Future Pro has at this time? Like,
Oh, I know.
you know,
So we have somewhere between 250 hours to 400 hours of exclusive content. The reason why I know this is because we do 2 calls a month, and sometimes we were doing 2 calls a week. And those calls last anywhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours long. And we're over, the last call I did was call 254. So we know that there's at least 254 pieces of content that are at minimum an hour and a half long. So that's a lot of content in there.
so how did you order all that content? It's a massive body of content. How did you put all those pieces of content in order? What was that process like?
So we organize the calls around what we feel are the biggest challenges that people are facing. So I might do multiple calls, like 3 calls on how to create an irresistible offer or how to design a love letter sales page. And then once that's done, those calls are archived, they're indexed, and there are summaries and sometimes worksheets that are attached to it that my team handle for me. They're all searchable and indexable. And so sometimes you're sitting there thinking, how to price, and if you just type that in a search bar, which took us forever to build, then it'll show like pretty much every video that has that phrase in it. And it can only get better because with the use of AI, you might not even have to write the exact phrase, and it'll just figure out like, I think you mean these things, and we'll just show you what we think. So now you don't have to watch all hour and a half. It'll just jump to the time code in which that is being said. So you can quickly search that way. Before we had a human being doing that, and that was exhausting to do. To say, oh, it's this video and it's somewhere in the third part.
Yeah. What's the most popular topic?
The most popular topics center around personal branding, I think.
That's
And brand
interesting.
strategy. Yeah.
I thought that might be pricing or yeah.
Well, inside the pro group is a little bit different, right? So a lot of the pricing content that you see is out there. And we don't even talk about pricing that much inside the group because they're established entrepreneurs. They can just quickly ask me a question and get some answers, but there are a ton of resources already inside and outside the group. We used to have this crazy curriculum map, and it was like a lot of little boxes around different topics and how they're connected together. And each one of those boxes were linked to a specific video. So someone brand new to the group who walks in is like, 254 videos. I can't watch those. Well, you can look at the map. We also have learning paths that are designed around specific things, and then people could follow along. Just the videos that they need to watch.
Do you feel like you can never really be fully compensated for all the time and creativity you put into putting together this massive body of content?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I ever need to be compensated because I feel so fulfilled in doing what it is that I'm doing that I've already been compensated for that, because creating content on YouTube has changed my life. It's changed my relationships. It's opened doors for me. I mean, I don't want to name drop, but I recently had dinner with Daniel Priestley. He organized his dinner while he was here in LA. And he told me a couple of his friends were going to show up. And I'm very antisocial and introverted. So I was like, do I really want to stay for this dinner? But Daniel's my friend. And so we've always had wonderful conversations together. I'd rather just it be dinner for 2, basically him and I. Yeah. And then later on, he tells me like who's going to show up. And sure enough, I don't know if you know who Mark Manson is. He wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Oh,
it's a best-selling book.
Yeah.
So he was sitting there. And then there was this guy, his name is Jesse, and Jesse runs a YouTube channel around basketball, and he has 20 million subscribers. And he's just a 25-year-old kid just sitting right next to me. And there was Jackie, there was Eric, and I forget the other person's name, but they all do really cool and important things. And I was thinking, oh, all of them are going to be my guests on my podcast at one point. So this is pretty cool. Now, the reason why I tell you that story is because I could not have engineered in 2014 when we dropped our first YouTube video that this was going to happen. That now I get to meet the people whose books I've read and admired and recommend to other people. People like Marty Neumeyer, Blair Enns, David C. Baker, Ron Baker, all the Bakers basically.
Yes.
So I get to do that now. So my life is more fulfilled and better and richer for it. So I don't think there's this whole thing where I'm thinking I need to be compensated for that. The reason why it's difficult for me to answer that question, because there's a different component to it, which is I believe this fundamentally, that there's no amount of money you could pay me that I'm not worth.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things where somebody's like, hey, we're going to pay you $300,000 to give a talk at this event. Great. I'm worth 300 grand. I'm actually worth more than that because I will bring you more value than what it is that you're paying me.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's what I say about you. I say if standing on the shoulders of giants were a person, it'll be Christo. Because every single time you make a piece of content, I'm almost certain most of your content, you tend to reference or mention like those names you just called, Kier,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
David C. Baker.
Yeah.
It's and I'm always amazed at that because I'm thinking, how are you keeping track of all these things that you're learning? Do you like write down the thoughts somewhere and kind of fit it in, or is it just naturally when you learn something, it imprints and it comes out in the context? How does that work for you?
I think it's the educator in me that citing sources is a very important thing. And Austin Kleon wrote about this in Steal Like an Artist. And he talks about like there's a good way of stealing and there's a bad way of stealing. Let's talk about the bad way of stealing, which is you're kind of insecure and embarrassed that you're learning from other people. So you use their content, you use their words and use their ideas, but you cite nothing and you try to cover your tracks so that no one can see that. Because your greatest fear is that people will say, oh, you're just regurgitating someone else's content. And in fact, that's what you're doing. But by hiding it, you get really shady, right? And this has happened to me a lot. So I post a lot of carousels on Instagram. And then what people do, they quite literally take the exact same words, phrases, and visuals, and then they change the design. In my opinion, they make it much uglier because I think I'm a pretty good designer. And then they buried the fact that I'm even related to this thing at all. Mm-hmm. They might mention it and bury the, inspired by, and my name. That's not inspired by. That is, I'm redesigning somebody else's thing worse. Mm-hmm. And so I'll message them like, it's not really inspired by. And if you're practicing recreating content, then practice on your own. Like you don't need to post that publicly, right? We don't post our master copies. Like if I were to try to redraw my Leonardo da Vinci drawing and trace it like pixel for pixel or stroke for stroke, I'm not putting it out there and pretending like, hey, I just did this really cool thing. By the way, I was inspired by Da Vinci. Everybody would call me out on that. Yeah, this is what people do. That's the bad way of stealing. The good way of stealing is saying, I want to honor the original creator, put their name, put their face, say that this is where I got this idea from, and I need to do one critical thing. I need to transform it somehow. Yeah. So if I hear an audio file and I design a moving piece of motion graphics with type, that's transformative. And if there's like a moving piece of type that's a motion graphics, I might act it out with a friend. That's transformative. And if you're really literally going to then just show the same thing, just reshare the freaking post. Reshare the photo of the page in the book. You don't need to like redo it. There's no point. And it's because you're insecure. And so I want to cite the people. It's a way to honor the ideas. And I readily tell people this. I barely have any original ideas myself. But pretty much all the ideas that I have are parts and pieces of things that someone else has taught me, something I've heard, something I've read, a workshop I've been in, and I've been able just to transform it just about that much. And I want to make sure that people understand that.
That's good. That's good. Do you have a personal content strategy, or everything you do is just folded in with the future? Do you have some strategy personally?
That's another really good question. You're asking the hard questions here. So it looks like there are two companies or two entities. There's me and there's the future. But I know you're an OG person who follows our content. So you may remember there was this time when there was this company called The School. Remember The School?
Yes.
And it was run with Jose, right?
Yes.
And Jose was really leading the content game because I didn't really know what I was doing. And I still, to this day, don't know what I'm doing. But when I started The Future, I was thinking to myself, what are we going to do? It's just me. I had one unpaid volunteer to help me. Okay? That was just the two of us. And so when I was writing content, I had to make the conscious decision of like, am I going to write in the we or the I? So if I write, we think this, we believe this, it felt disingenuous to me because there is no we, it's just me. So I don't want to pretend like I'm this big corporation. There's this governing board or board of directors. It's just me. So I started writing in the I, and people were giving me a hard time about it. It's like, oh, it's so self-centered, isn't it? Like, shouldn't you be writing the we, the plural? I'm like, there is no we, bro. It's just I, just me and Aaron, and we're going to make some content together. And I felt that that was the most authentic thing. So it was just me, and I'm writing I, and I'm sharing my opinions, my thoughts. And as the Future, by the way, not as Christo. I'm just writing in the Future's account. And it starts to grow and grow and grow. And so for a period of time, the Future was me, it was just an I, and I just wrote this way, and there was just really one opinion. And then I started to work on my own personal account, and we got a young marketing intern from the UK to help us create content for our Instagram. But what she was doing was she was scraping my content, the things I was writing about, the things I was speaking about, and just making sure that there was some version of that on Instagram. So there really isn't two personalities. It's just me writing. But now what's happened is there's a team that's helping out with the Future. And so we're starting to diverge a little bit. But I still write from my own personal perspective.
So are you going to have more, let's call them personalities on the channel solo, or is it going to be mainly you still going into the Future?
It is still going to be mostly me. And the reason is most of my team don't want to be on camera.
Okay.
And there was a period in time when we had creative directors like Matthew and Sina.
Yeah.
We had Greg Gunn, and they were making content. But the rate in which they're making content, because they want to do really refined, scripted, produced, edited, color graded, motion graphics, everything was really tight. Their cadence was much, much slower than mine. They might drop a video a month or something like that. So by volume, the things that I'm creating are going to just blanket the entire channel. There are still videos with Greg on the channel. There's still videos with Matthew, but they both have since left the company and are doing their own thing. So I don't currently have people who are excited to be on camera right now.
Okay, so I want to do a tiny fun exercise here at this point. So you are on how many channels as Chris Do right now?
I'm on TikTok, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Pinterest. I don't know. I consider that.
Okay, let's just call it 5, right?
Yeah, 5.
So let's do a tier ranking for those channels. From A, well, let's go from S tier to S, A, B, C, D, S to D, in terms of strategic importance of the channel. And let's see if you can give a ranking for each of those. And could you tell me like why are those important? So let's rank them.
Yeah, there's actually 6. I forgot to mention the podcast because that's a different channel.
Oh, the podcast, but that's the Future, right?
Well, okay, you're right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's only me, but it is as the Future, correct? Technically, you're right. Yeah, so 5.
So let me just interject here as the host of the podcast. Chris was right. I should have let him rank the podcast as well, the Future podcast, because he's the one hosting it. He's doing all the work on it. So it should have made it into this tier ranking. Because as he explained before, in the beginning, it was just him with just minor assistance. I do think, though, that the podcast would have ranked pretty high, maybe right after YouTube. Chris, if you're looking at this and you want to come in the comments and confirm that, you can do it. I'll include it in the tier ranking. But I really should have let Chris rank his podcast as well. So we missed out on that tiny piece. All right, onward to the tier ranking.
So what is the most important to the least important?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's rank them. S tier is...
Shoot. Okay, I think the most important channel for us is YouTube.
Okay, YouTube. That makes sense.
Yes. It's where we started. I have a deep connection and love for YouTube, and it's our biggest audience to date. And number 2 would be
A tier.
Probably LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
Yes.
Interesting. So why LinkedIn?
LinkedIn allows me to create content the way that I want to create content. And the algorithm currently is the way that algorithms should be. It's based on your followers and it's based on engagement. So every time I make a piece of content, I can feel pretty confident that who is supposed to see it will see it. And there's a business audience there that are mostly real people. There aren't as many weird fake accounts posing as real people. There are still some for sure, but you don't have to worry so much about that on LinkedIn.
Right, right. As a sidebar, I know you read comments on LinkedIn. Do you read the comments on YouTube?
Absolutely. And who you know who responds to them? Me.
You?
I still respond to them, yes. And I try to do them. There will be moments where I'm so busy I can't look at them, but
Right.
I'll just go in and say, look at comments I haven't responded to, and I'll just bang them out. I'll just go through them.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
it's not always me. There's somebody else that's in there, or somebody on my team who responds. Sometimes he'll switch over as himself and not as the Future, but most of the times it's just me. So 90% of the comments that you see on the Future by the Future is because I posted that.
I have to ask, are you okay with that? I know the comments can be brutal.
Oh, yeah.
Is it all right?
Oh, yeah. They are brutal. And I'll dance with them. It's fine. You know, what people don't understand is I'm 52 years old and I've been doing my business for 30 years. So in many instances, I've run a business longer than some of these kids have been alive. So are they going to say something to hurt me? No. If it hurts me, it means because I believe it to be true. And then that's a check-in for me. Like, oh, I wasn't being a good person there and I don't like myself. So when they call me out on that, I'm like, yeah, okay, you have a point. I need to mind my temper, right? I didn't phrase that correctly. But most of the times, what they're saying is projection of their own world and their own world views. And it has nothing to do with me. So I'll engage with them. Now, I don't know if you know who Mo is. He's on the channel
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
a
no
bit.
Mo, yeah.
He's on my team. And Mo is like, I'm just here for the comments. I just want to see how you're going to respond to these people. He goes, I didn't even watch the video. I just read your back and forth. And he's like busting up. And he'll screen capture and send it back to me. It's like, dude, that was cold how you responded to that kid. All right. I hope they'll be okay. And he's just laughing. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Back on track. So we have
Yeah.
an S tier, we have YouTube, and B tier, we have LinkedIn. What is C tier?
Instagram.
IG. Okay.
Yeah, and when we talk about the differences here in terms of how important it is to me, we're talking about little degrees. I'm not talking about like there's an ocean between them. It's just I love Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
I know Instagram is probably the place that you got the most traction first. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, I was able to grow pretty fast on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. IG at C tier. No, A, B, no. B tier, because LinkedIn was above that. So let's go
Yes.
C tier. What's C tier now?
So after Instagram, I'm gonna say probably X, Twitter,
Okay. Why X Twitter at that level?
because there are some really smart people on Twitter X, and you can have a conversation with people really fast because they're all just hanging out there ready to talk to you. The crazy part to Twitter X is that if you want to talk to a large corporation, mention them and they will respond really fast, because I think it is a mature enough platform that they know customer service people are hanging by to make sure everything's cool. Somebody told me this before that said that if you have a problem with a company, mention the CEO of that company and you're going to get it resolved really, really fast. So if there's poor service, like say you get into a car accident and the insurance company isn't handling it well for you, and you've paid your monthly fees or whatever it is, mention the CEO of the company and you'll see how quickly it gets resolved.
Right. Right.
Now,
So
I don't do that at the very first step. I want to make sure I can resolve it through proper channels, because it's not like I'm trying to drag everybody into the fight. And I want to make sure I'm polite and clear. Like, oh, this is disappointing. I paid my fees and now the result is this. And I hope someone from the insurance team can help me resolve this, because this doesn't feel right to me. I want to start it there. I don't want to start dropping bombs on people. I'm not trying to pick fights, right?
yeah,
We want to be cordial. And I'll tell you something. Here's a real world example. I own a Volvo, and it's like the top of the line Volvo, and I've never owned a Volvo before. And there was a manufacturing defect with something that literally cut my finger when I'm driving. And I was bleeding in the car. I'm like, shoot. And then I was meaning to take it into the dealership, but I'm a busy guy and the dealership's not close by. So eventually I take it in. They're like, oops, you're out of warranty. I'm like, by how long? They're like 30 days or 22 days. I'm like, shoot. But this is a manufacturing defect. They're like, well, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
I said, are you sure about that? You really? And he's like, it's going to cost $1,000 to replace this. Not because it's expensive, but because we have to take this whole component out and replace it. Right. I'm not happy about this at all. So I go online and said, it's very disappointing. This is my first Volvo and I've enjoyed the experience and this has happened. And I think I showed my finger being cut.
Ooh.
And he said, Volvo, you want to step up here? And somebody from Volvo within 24 hours contacted me and said, hey, tell us what's going on. And they resolved it. Right. And they stayed on top of it. And they gave me all the grace because they said, oh, take it in and we'll take care of it. And again, because I'm so busy, I'm traveling. By the time I get in there, that ticket is dead. Yeah. And so the guy says, nope, we have no such message from Volvo. And I'm like, shoot. So I reach out again and they do take care of it.
All right.
That's a company that understands customer service and says there's a letter of the law and there's the intention behind the law. And it's like we don't want people, especially probably, they didn't say this, with your reach, because the damage that I could do as an unsatisfied customer is not good. It's not good for them. So fix the thing. It doesn't cost that much to fix. And they did the right thing. And now I'm still a fan of Volvo.
Yeah. I was just about to ask that. I was just about to ask whether or not a big part of that response was because you are you.
Right.
And I mean, I guess that helps.
It helps.
It helps.
Yeah, but somebody else who told me that she's an attorney and she works for healthcare companies and she's the one who approves claims, right? And she told me that if they don't approve your claim, just mention the CEO and you'll see what happens. And she's talking about regular people right now.
Yeah.
Because what she wants to do, even though she works for the healthcare company, is she wants to approve and reimburse everybody.
Yeah.
But the policies are she can't. And she goes, just give them a reason so that they just send me a note saying approve it. And she's happy to approve it.
Right.
Right? So you can still be a nobody and still get some help. So that's the next one. Yeah.
Power of Twitter. And bringing up the rear is...
Yes. TikTok, of course.
Of course? How come?
Well, of course, because that's the last one that's on the list, right? By deduction.
Oh, right. You mean like that. But why is it so low on the list?
It's low on the list. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, and I'll just put it out there. So I think pre-pandemic, I was at Adobe Max, and I put out like how to build your social following on Instagram. And TikTok was still a relatively new platform for folks. And somebody asked me, hey, what are you doing on TikTok? I said, I don't know anything about TikTok. And they said, I'm a little nervous because TikTok is owned by a Chinese corporation. And sometimes you don't know what's happening. Like how some of these dumb piece of content get 300,000 views on it, it boggles my mind. I just can't figure it out.
Yeah.
So are we always certain that every view that you get is legitimate? Or are they vanity metrics? Or they're robots following you to make you feel like you're doing something important? And then they're like, oh, this is not going to age well. So people in the comments are just ripping on me, but they have the vision of force or hindsight, which is, well, now you're a year later watching that video clowning on me because TikTok blows up and it's like crazy viral machine, right? But when I made that video, that's how I felt. So 3 years later, they're like, not going to age well. Yeah. And so I'm like, maybe I was wrong. And then what is Congress going to do right now, or the Senate? They're banning TikTok.
All right.
Because why? Because they're a Chinese-controlled company. And they are concerned about privacy and data hacking and all kinds of stuff. So it goes right back to that. Now, here's the other thing I know. And I don't have any proof of this, but there are people who are TikTok strategists who tell me TikTok's main mission was to make it the most addictive social platform on earth.
Yeah.
And they have all kinds of things that they do to get you to become addicted. For example, when you post your 10th video, they send a disproportionate amount of traffic to you because they know it's like, that's a milestone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's little things that they do to keep you like, oh, I'm about to forget about you. And boom, they give you something again. It's kind of like a crap dealer. I want to get off this platform and I can't. And here's the thing. Hats off to them. I think they have the smartest algorithm I've ever seen. Because I open up TikTok to like respond to somebody. And then I forget 30 minutes later who I'm trying to respond to. Because one video at the end, I'm like, oh no, I'll finish this one and I'm done. Nope, this one's freaking pretty funny too. And oh my God, I can't believe that's happening.
Yeah, TikTok is like that. It's pretty addictive. And I think that,
Yeah.
I looked at your content on TikTok and I realized that it doesn't seem like a lot of effort is going in here.
Yeah, not a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
I post a couple of videos. You know, the weird thing that makes me upset is that my videos that I share on TikTok that someone else reshares is doing better than my video. I'm like, come
It's
on,
crazy.
guys. Come on. It's my video. And you know what's interesting is Adam, is it Adam Mosseri from Instagram, the CEO?
Yeah.
He said like from now moving forward, they're going to weight the original post more than they do reposts.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
repost is going to direct the traffic back to the original post, and you'll get some views, but not as much as before. It's like, why did it take you guys that long? So I'm curious if TikTok will do the same.
I don't know. I think
Yeah,
they'll do
who knows?
anything to get more,
Yeah.
whatever gets the most amount of views and traction and so on.
Yeah. There's one more platform.
Right?
It's
Go ahead.
Threads. It's Threads.
Threads.
Threads will be number 6. Look at your face when you said that.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
I don't know. Threads. Somebody, okay, when Threads came out, there was somebody
Yeah.
who was the digital content strategist was coming out and was saying, get on Threads now. You know, you have to capture the early audience. And I shouldn't have said this, but I went in their comments and I said, do not deviate from your current strategy. Focus on what you're building. Do not jump on a new platform. You know, if your content is good, it'll translate. And yeah, now it's, I don't know how often I go on there. I don't know what's happening there. I don't
Yeah.
know are you enjoying there? I don't know.
I go there from time to time, and Threads was created as an alternative to what seems to be now very right-leaning Twitter,
Yeah.
right, with Elon running it. And I think it's important to have competition. And what Threads did was it gave you a huge audience automatically from your current audience, and I appreciate that. And I'll put a post on Threads, and I'll see how it does, and I'll keep playing. The one thing I've learned in the years in which I've been playing with social media is when there's a new platform, register your account, put a
Yeah.
little bit of effort in to claim your name more than anything
Yeah.
else. And in the event that you want to invest more time in there, you at least have a stake. Otherwise, you can't even get your own name.
Yeah. Yeah.
So get
Yeah.
on it and do a little bit. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, and if you enjoy it more. So there was this general sentiment in the early days of Threads, like this is a much more positive, inclusive, and safe space. And it just quickly devolves right back into Twitter. And that's
Yeah.
what it's become again.
Is the internet. I mean,
It's the internet. What are you going to do?
I call that thing you described earlier, saving your seat
Yeah.
on a platform. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Stake
All right,
your
good. So
claim.
stake your claim. All right.
Yeah.
So that's the good tier ranking. I like that. Hopefully that's going to be useful for people when they look at their own platforms and how they rank them. Okay, so I know some time ago I'm going to quote you again. You said that your personal brand is not your personal brand is not your business, is what you said, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
you used Elon Musk as an example, and you talked about when he misbehaves, it negatively impacts his companies. My thought was there ever a time when you wanted to say something publicly, but you know you couldn't because of how it might impact the future?
I mean, there are some things we're always editing ourselves. But I need to be clear about that, because there are things that you might say amongst your friends or your family that are too unfiltered for public consumption. But I steer clear from politics, and there's a reason why I want to stay away from religion, politics, sex, those kinds of things, because it's not my jam. I might talk to you about it in a private location, and we can chat because maybe that's what we feel like talking about. But because I'm not studied, I'm not trying to build my brand around having an opinion on politics or religion or anything else. I want to build my brand on helping creative entrepreneurs develop their business skills. And so you can distract a lot of people because now all of a sudden you're talking about this other thing. And I think if that's what really you're passionate about, there are political junkies. They're the ones who should be talking about this, because you know how I mentioned certain authors and ideas?
Yeah.
Well, I know nothing about that when it comes to anything outside of the things that I'm mostly interested in. And if for the same reason, someone who's a political junkie probably doesn't want to create like a lot of business and marketing, personal branding content because that's not their jam. And if you're like a big music aficionado, well, you should create content around music and try and keep the other stuff kind of to the Thanksgiving dinner table, you know?
So you kind of stay in your lane when it comes to what makes sense for your business.
No, what makes sense to me. I'm not that interested in that, right?
Right.
Like I love fishing, but I don't love fishing enough. I want to talk about it and integrate it into what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Unless there's an appropriate metaphor for marketing.
Yeah. Is that like the difference between like personal content and private content?
I think so.
Yeah.
But you know, I think based on what I've been doing with Instagram, once you create a lot of professional educational content, people start to wonder who's the person behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know somebody said this to me, especially younger folk, millennials, Gen Z. They'll say something like, if I don't know who you are, I don't trust you. And the fact that you don't show who you are bothers me. I'm like, I didn't think it was interesting to anybody. And I think the sequence here matters a lot. So, you know, my son, my oldest boy, he's 20 years old. He's almost 21. He creates content about his entire life all the time. I think that's how his generation creates content. Yeah. And it's very unfiltered. Like he doesn't want to spend time color grading or making it too polished. He wants to tell a good story, and that's what's important to him. For my generation, I'm Gen X. I want to just create value for people. So it's like two different generations coming together and meeting at this same digital space. So I think it's kind of important for me to make sure I'm speaking to younger people as well, so that I want to incorporate some personal content and be less filtered. And I think that helps them to relate.
Yeah. Have you guest starred on your son's content yet?
No, I'm in the background.
He hasn't invited you on.
Yeah, no, I think it's both my boys want to create their own identity around what they want and not pull me into it. I am in the background of a lot of things, or I might be a little bit more than the background, but I'm not a person that he doesn't want to leverage my account to build his account because he's got his own voice, his own identity.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that that's what they're doing.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's your biggest source of content ideas recently? And how has that changed since when you first launched?
Yeah, I don't think it's changed that much. And I'll tell you what it is, and it's going to surprise a lot of people. The biggest source for my content is conversations with people. When I'm at a really interesting dinner party like the one I mentioned earlier, I'm hearing and seeing ideas or observations about that I think, what is my take on that? And I want to share that. Where this works really well too is if I'm in a group of people who are eager to learn, or people who are very curious like yourself, who ask me questions about things I've not thought about before. That's an opportunity for me to like, there's some dark space in my brain that now was just illuminated because you asked a question that got me to think, what is my answer to that? And if I think it's interesting, I'll write a note about it, and then I'll turn it into a piece of content at some point in the future.
When I listen to what you share, I often think about how much work has gone into receiving it, processing it, and then turning it into something that people will understand. And I think you really have the heart of a teacher. Many people are not like that. They can't teach in that same way. What are some ways people who don't have that gift, that how they can create content, even if they are challenged by the fact that they can't explain it the way you can explain it?
Yeah. I'm curious, are you a parent?
I am.
Okay. I look at the way your face lit up there. I like that.
Yeah.
And how many children do you have, and how old are they?
2 girls, 10 and 12.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah. So you are a teacher. Anyone who's a parent is a teacher. Anyone who's had a younger sibling is a teacher. And you might not have thought of it this way, but there are things that you've done. And first we have to adopt this mindset. The mindset is, I'm looking after somebody. I'm trying to protect them. I'm trying to make their life so that they suffer less than they need to. Mm-hmm. So if you have a younger sibling, it could have been like, here's how high school works, and here's how you deal with bullies, or here's how you get into a certain college or university or whatever it is that you want to do. And so then you have to be able to explain it to them in ways that are very simple. And you don't want to overwhelm them with too much information. And that's the key. So as a parent, you might, first of all, especially when your daughters were very young, you might have gotten down on your knees and then talked to them on their level. And this is a really important thing that we learn from like parenting courses. Don't talk to them from up here, because all they do is look up at you. Go down to their level. Meet them where they're at. See it from their perspective so that they can feel like you understand them. Those are very important principles. Now, you might have a very complicated idea, but you know if you explain it to your 6-year-old daughter or 4-year-old daughter at that time, they're not going to understand this. So what you have to do is you have to find something that they do understand and frame what you're trying to teach them around the things they care about the most.
Yeah.
So maybe they care about Powerpuff Girls or something. And you're like, you know how this character does that? Have you ever wondered why they do that and how they were able to beat that enemy? Then all of a sudden, they're like, I get it, Dad. You're talking about this. So you have to reframe what it is that you want to teach them and wrap it around the things that they understand and are most excited about, right? There's a gentleman, I'm spacing on his name right now. I think his name is Sujit Mitra. And he has this beautiful TED Talk and this wonderful idea. It's called a hole in the wall computer, or computer in the wall or something like that. Basically, they literally go to some place that's really broken down. He cuts a hole out of it and installs like a really old computer in it. And he lets kids in third world countries work on it. And he's like, he has this whole idea that we don't need teachers. We need facilitators because the kids are really smart. And the biggest challenge is to come up with the right question. So he was sharing this example. He goes, well, people wanted him to teach about gingivitis. And then he's like, oh, this was a tough one. What would the question be like such that the kids would be interested? And he says, here's what he came up with. He goes, kids, do you notice how sometimes you have teeth and they fall out and then you grow up and then they come back in? But when they fall out again as an adult, they don't grow back. Yeah. Why is that? And then he let them go off, and later they came back. There's something called gum disease, Mr. Mitra. It's called gingivitis, and it's what happens. And they're like, and it's wonderful. And in this way, when he phrases the problem correctly in ways that they can understand, they're able to do math, science, and physics and things 2, 3, 4, 5 grades above their level. Yeah. Yeah. So you have to just frame the problem so that they can get excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm. You know how to pull at my heartstrings, man. Just mentioning the daughters.
I saw
like
that in your face.
That's like a hack right there.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. You have to do things, meet people at the level of their current understanding and help build them up. Yeah.
Yep. And you know how the meta layer here is? You asked me a pretty complicated question. How do you become a better teacher? And the first thing I was thinking, what do you know about? What do you care about?
Yeah.
So I had asked you, are you a dad? And you're like, yes. Well, that's going to be my entry point. See, so my whole conversation with you was a way that you can understand, yes, I've been a teacher all this time because I have 2 little ones I have to look after.
Yeah, I see you. A little rope-a-dope there, you know?
Yeah.
That was like what you did to Blair Enns one time when you sold him you were talking about sales and being sold to and all of the DMs you were getting that were terrible, and you basically sold them during the podcast. Okay, this is a technique. This is like the Aikido of conversation.
Yeah, a little bit, because he wasn't expecting it from me, so his guard was very, it was low.
Yeah, his guard was got caught. That's a good example.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we're going to come in for a very, very nice landing here.
Okay.
What do I want to know? I have so many things I could ask you, but I want to just ask you probably a couple of fun things before we finish.
Okay.
So you are, and I have something in common. I consider myself a bit of a design snob as well.
Okay.
So there are things I won't wear because I don't like the logo. Recently you did the podcast about the Under Armour logo.
You felt that?
I did.
I mean, come on, guys. Let's fix the logo. Come on.
I did. I did. Are there any other logos that fall into that category that you can think
A
of?
lot. There are too many for me to say. It would be me calling out every industry. It's easier to point out the ones that are good, and there are not that many.
And what was the process for you in designing the Future logo?
It was very simple. Once I explain it, you're like, wait a minute, I get it now. So there's a handful of typefaces that I love, like I really love. Helvetica.
I
And
know
right now
that.
I'm using Champion Gothic, or otherwise known as Knockout. And I use Futura, or I used to use Futura a lot. Futura is this really beautiful, powerful, bold, geometric typeface. And it's used a lot in the advertising industry. So when we were making content as the school, our default typeface was Futura. Okay? And we would use that for everything, for thumbnails, for our keynote, everything, because it's such a beautiful, useful typeface. And then when Jose and I split up and I started a new company, I was like, what do I call my new company? And I couldn't figure it out. And I have a book somewhere. See what's happening here? Okay.
Oh,
Yes. So we're sitting there. I'm like, I have a whole book full of names. And everywhere we would drive, I would just yell out, there's a street name. I'm like, Carlisle. My wife's like, what? Ford. No. And just like, I'm just trying to come up with a name. Junction, crossing. And she goes, no, these are terrible. I'm like, yeah, they are. Jose and I kind of have a little bit of a high emotion, not falling out, but we're both not feeling great about the separation. And we're having this kind of proxy war because it's a community that's shown up for both Jose and me. And so instead of speaking directly to each other, we kind of are talking about some other entity, but we both know we're just talking about each other, but we don't mention each other by name, right?
yeah.
And so Jose writes his thing, and he's very good at writing when he's focused. He writes his manifesto, and the manifesto is really good. He goes, the role of the designer in the 21st century has changed. We no longer need order takers, like, do you want fries with that? We're transitioning to a thing where we have a seat at the table in the C-suite, helping decision makers design a better future. In the future, this is what's going to happen. In the future, this is what's going to happen. In the future. I know he's calling me out because he was taking any idea that I had. He was trying to write the opposite of it and just like stab at me a little bit. And I was like, what am I going to call my company? I know what. I'm going to hijack his post. I'm going to call my company The Future because he says, in the future, this will happen. So then that becomes a free publicity for my company, The Future. And what typeface should we use? Futura. Futura for the future. And so people who know the deep cuts, now you know.
Oh, it's like it was written. That's
Yeah,
so
it was
cool.
there's a whole reason. Nothing is arbitrary.
Right, it's so cool. It's so cool. That's so cool. Okay. That I'm not
Now
gonna
you
ask
know.
anything. Now I know.
Now
Every
you
time I
know.
see the logo, I'm gonna think about.
Yes.
Okay. Very last thing, and then we're closing off. I promise. Very last thing. Right. One of the things that I really took hold of with the Future was the building a brand series.
Yes.
That's with Ben and all that drama.
Yes.
Webflow, etc., etc.
Right.
So that was the series that you did. I saw recently that you were on 60-Day Hustle,
Yeah.
right? Unfortunately, in my part of the world, I have Amazon Prime, but I can't look at it,
Yeah.
right? How was that for you? And are you planning to do anything in the future that is series-based coming up soon?
Yes. Okay. Really good question. Great way to kind of wrap up the show here. By the way, if you have a VPN, I believe you can watch it.
I'll try.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that kind of stuff because I get whatever I want here. But okay, here we go. One of our partners in the platform that we use as part of our tech stack is a company called Teachable. And I have a wonderful relationship with the team over at Teachable. So Olivia is my contact over at Teachable. And she reached out to me and says, Chris, there's an opportunity here for you to be on a TV show that's going to premiere on Amazon Prime. Is it something that you are willing to do? And I said, what's involved? Well, you just need to show up for one day of taping. I'm like, I can do that. So they just want you to be a mentor to these contestants. And I arrive on the day of. It's in Burbank. It's this big production. There's a stage and everything. And I walk in there like, what do I need to do? They're like, well, we'll kind of just wing it. I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you'll talk about branding. And there's a challenge. I'm like, shoot. I like to be a little bit more prepared. Like, I don't know enough about the characters, the challenge, or anything. And sure enough, they're like, in 3, 2, 1, come and welcome my friend Chris. And I'm coming there. I'm like, what the fudge? And the lights are on me, and they're all the contestants. I'm like, shoot. And they're like, okay, this is what we're doing, Chris. What are your ideas? I don't know if you've ever done that. Have you ever parachuted into a total foreign environment and just was expected to start talking with a bunch of cameras on you? And so here's the weird thing. This is what people don't know. I started talking, and all of a sudden, like, I was having deja vu. The strongest feeling of deja vu I've ever had. When I was looking into the environment, I saw the same number of people, this very red environment, not dissimilar to yours. And I was just like, my brain just completely froze. Not so much about the pressure. I just could not think anymore. And I was just stuck there for like what seemed like an eternity, probably like 5 seconds. I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying, guys. Hold on a second. And luckily, there was enough time to recover, and we figured it out, and then we finished the taping. 10 minutes is going to fly by like that. So if you don't capture people in the first 15 seconds, they're going to be gone. When we're looking at our retention graph, you'll see that it takes a nosedive right away. So we need to hold it. And the easiest way I know how to do that is to find two words that don't belong together, one built on vulnerability, and then pair those two things up. I try to use this thing called loud introvert, pairing two things together. So when I introduce myself on stage, I say to people I'm super socially awkward, but I want to make content so good I don't have to develop social skills. I'm a loud introvert. So you see like everybody in the room who can relate to that, all of a sudden I can say, well, I don't know much about this guy yet, but now I'm interested in spending more time to figure out this person. And then later on they told me I was really good and impactful. And I'm at the finale. And then I see this thing air on TV. My part, after taping for an hour and a half, was 3 minutes long.
Wow.
Then what's real interesting is I couldn't watch it because I was like, my kids are there with me. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a rough one. I'm like shaking. I'm like, oh, what am I going to say? Because it's the first time that in a long time that I made a piece of content that I have no control over the edit.
Yeah.
No control. So you know how reality TV is. They can cut it any which way.
Yeah.
Are they going to edit around the part where my brain is freezing? Or so I watch it, and it's cut out of sequence. It's very interesting to see like what you said, but how it's presented. So they're trying to tie certain ideas together to hit a 3-minute window. The good thing that came out of that was I met the producers, Chris and Michelle, from the production company, and they're like, "Do you want to do stuff together?" I'm like, "Yeah." So my mind has been and continues to be on serial content that is at the highest level of production that allows the audience, the community, to step into a real design practice. I have a couple different ideas, but I have so many things going on. It's like I don't know when that's going to see light of day because it requires a lot of energy, money, and resource to make it happen. So in fact, after today's call, in a little bit at 1 o'clock, I'm going to be going to do a pickup part or some other additional promotion for the 60-day hustle. So I'm going to go to Burbank later today.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great way to kind of just tie everything.
Yeah. You have like up to the second information here.
Excellent. That's good. But I wish you all the best with that. I mean, I know it's good to hear that you still get stressed out over things like that. I mean, it's because I see you and you're so very ice cold all the time and delivering these classes. So, humans are humans.
Yeah.
And that's good stuff. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on the Useful Content Podcast. If people want to find you online, where should they go?
The easiest thing to do is just find me at the Chris Do, and Do spelled D-O, on the social platforms that we mentioned on today's show: YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads.
Yeah. I was thinking of doing a t-shirt that says "Do it like Do." But I didn't think it would translate. People would say "do it like do," so they would have to know the context,
Yeah.
Thank you, students, for joining us today on the Useful Content Podcast, Useful Content Classroom. Dismissed.
Wonderful. Let me hit stop.
And we're clear. Yeah, normally we have an after show talk, but we've gone for a long time, so let's wrap it on up like a gift. The Useful Content Podcast is brought to you and produced by Relate Studios. You can see the work we do at our website, relatestudios.com. If you like what you've heard on the podcast today, please follow, leave a rating, and come back next week for another great episode. And if you want to get more useful content in between that, You can follow me, Juma Bannister, on LinkedIn. See you soon in the Useful Content Classroom. But until then, don't forget to make useful content.